In 1964, as summer drew near, people in the civil rights movement dubbed it Freedom Summer and laid out an ambitious agenda. College students up north were being recruited to travel to the South and work for the movement. The main destination was Mississippi, where only a tiny fraction of all blacks were registered to vote. The primary goal was to sign them up. The secondary goal was to avoid getting killed.
The Klan in Mississippi were so deep-seated in violence and intimidation and harassment of blacks to keep them from voting that they would do anything possible to continue the way of life. And when they found out that they could not, they did have to resort to murder.
They saw us as outsiders. They saw us as troublemakers. They saw us as agitators.
The movement was looking for new volunteers. When a civil rights recruiter came to New York City's Queens College in June 1964, the purpose of the mission he described struck a chord in Andrew Goodman, age 20. Andy had been raised in a Jewish home where ethics and social activism held great importance.
Andy heard what was happening down there and how black people were not able to vote, and he came home and he told me about it. And he said that he wants more than anything else to go down there.
Andy joined other recruits in Oxford, Ohio, where they were trained on how to help register black voters and what to expect from the South segregationists. James Foreman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee warned the students, "I may be killed, you may be killed." Andy would soon meet up with Michael Schwerner, another activist from a similar background. Schwerner was a college-educated Jewish man from New York. 6 months earlier, Mickey and his wife Rita had come to Meridian, Mississippi. In 1964, this building housed the local chapter of CORE, the Congress for Racial Equality. Rita and Mickey began working here with CORE worker James Chaney. He was a passionate young man who'd grown up under the sting of segregation and racism and felt compelled to act on his beliefs.
James Chaney lived in Meridian. He had lived there pretty much all his life. He was very committed to the civil rights movement. He was a very straightforward, honest person, and he and Mickey worked very closely.
They knew their work put them in jeopardy, yet they persevered. John Lewis was a civil rights leader who was also active in Mississippi during Freedom Summer. He recalls their struggle.
People have been beaten, people have been arrested, people have been jailed for attempting to register to vote.
When James Chaney became a full-time CORE worker, he and Mickey started making plans to contact various churches and various groups about participation, primarily in voter registration activities.
This flew in the face of white supremacists. Keeping blacks from voting was key to maintaining white power. The Ku Klux Klan targeted Mickey Schwerner.
And they referred to him as the Jew boy with a beard. They called him a nigger lover. So he had all these things going against him.
The Klan that based itself in and around Meridian, Mississippi, called itself the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. During the 60s, their goal was to terrorize the civil rights movement. The leader was Imperial Wizard Sam Bowers.
Sam Bowers represents Satan. Sam Bowers is an evil man. What he would like to do is do away with the black race altogether. And he hates the Jew worse than he hates the black man.
During the 1960s, Billy Roy Pitts served in the Klan as Bowers' bodyguard.
People was coming from up north, and I quote, they were stirring up problems with our niggers down here. And they didn't want this to happen.
Sunday, June 21st, 1964. It was just one day after Andrew Goodman had joined up with Mickey Schwerner and James Chaney.
Mickey and James heard that the Mount Zion Church had been burned and several people had been quite badly beaten.
The trio drove to the church in Philadelphia, Mississippi, to assess the damage and provide emotional support to the congregation. But they soon ran into trouble. After the men left the church, they were stopped by Deputy Sheriff Cecil Price, who escorted them to the Neshoba County Jail. They were held on a variety of trumped-up charges and were not allowed to make a telephone call.
It was a very trying moment for all of us. We didn't know what had happened to them. We feared for the worst.
Phone calls were made to all of the jails in the area, and we know that the Neshoba County Jail was called.
But the jailers denied the three were being held. At around 10 p.m., without explanation, Deputy Sheriff Price told them they were free to leave the jail. The three young men didn't drive far before they were once again stopped by Deputy Sheriff Cecil Price. But this time, he was accompanied by 2 carloads of Klansmen. As Southern white supremacists braced for an onslaught of civil rights workers in the summer of '64, the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan took a vanguard position. In Mississippi, under the directive Imperial Wizard Sam Bowers, the Klan would send an unmistakable message to the movement.
It was a war. It was a terrorist war.
After releasing 3 young civil rights workers on Sunday night, June 21st, 1964, Neshoba County Deputy Sheriff Cecil Price pulled the trio over again. This time, he delivered them into the hands of the Ku Klux Klan. The 3 men were driven down an old logging road to a remote location where the car stopped. They were ordered out and each shot at point-blank range. And though these men were murdered in cold blood, the last words of Mickey Schwerner had a chilling effect on his killers.
The Klansmen were haunted by Schwerner's last words as he was snatched out of the car and a gun shoved into his chest by a very angry and animal-like Klansman who said, "Are you that nigger lover?" and put the gun in his chest, and Schwerner said, "Sir, I know just how you feel." And those were his last words. And the Klansmen could not get them out of their minds. Why would he say that? Why wouldn't he snarl or grovel or cry? He said, "Sir, I know just how you feel," as an expression of extreme disciplined faith of nonviolence, that you can always make human contact with people even if they're treating you as an enemy. It's a refusal to acknowledge enemy status to fellow human beings.
John Lewis came face to face with his enemy the following day. He went to Philadelphia, Mississippi with a small group of colleagues to confront Deputy Sheriff Cecil Price and Sheriff Lawrence Rainey.
I saw evil. I saw hate. They lied to us. Like they didn't know what happened to these young people. The killing of these 3 young men, more than anything else, dramatized the conspiracy.
There was a conspiracy in the South between people in political power, judges, prosecutors, those in legal power that held the law enforcement positions, conspiring with those individuals who would carry on their dirty work, the Ku Klux Klan.
But the Klan had miscalculated. The disappearance of the 3 civil rights workers created an indelible story of black and white brothers fighting for a noble cause. Instead of turning away in fear, America aimed a laser-like focus on the South.
That was part of the whole point of Freedom Summer. They decided that if they brought the sons and daughters of the America's white elite down there, the country would pay attention. And boy, were they right, because as soon as this mixed trio disappeared, it became a huge national event.
The day after the workers were reported missing, the FBI, acting on a tip, discovered Mickey Schwerner's '63 Ford Fairlane station wagon in a thicket about 80 feet off the highway. As J. Edgar Hoover updated President Johnson over the phone, The car, which had been torched, was still smoldering.
Apparently what's happened, these men have been killed. Although I can't tell whether anybody's in there in view of the intense heat.
Well, now what would make you think they've been killed?
Because of the fact that it is the same car that they were in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
As it turned out, that there were no bodies in the car, but the grisly discovery was nonetheless bad news to friends and family.
Cars don't get burned and buried in swamps with the inhabitants of them last known to have been held by Mississippi sheriffs and have a happy ending.
Hoover suggested to Johnson that U.S. Marshals be sent to Mississippi, but the president wanted FBI. You get your men in there now, he ordered. Hoover had no choice but to comply. The FBI director sent 150 FBI agents, despite his own personal animosity toward the movement. Johnson also sent Navy divers to hunt for the three men. Meanwhile, in Washington, the uproar over the three missing civil rights workers ignited the political process. Within a week after their disappearance, the national attention it attracted helped convince Congress to get behind Johnson's 1964 Civil Rights Bill. With Southern legislators no longer able to stem the tide of change, the bill was passed and Johnson signed it into law on July 2nd, 1964. As history was being made, Martin Luther King was at his side. With the new law in place, the FBI began infiltrating the Klan with a controversial policy of recruiting a network of paid Klan informants. Hoover felt it was a necessary evil. In early August, the policy paid off. An informant who'd reportedly been paid $30,000 told the FBI where to look. The bodies of Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Mickey Schwerner were found buried beneath an earthen dam. For friends and family, the difficult mourning process could begin.
Andy was grasping a handful of dirt as if he, went down and just grabbed the ground that he fell on. There's something about it that just made me wonder. I hoped that he wasn't alive, in pain. I hoped that he was killed instantly.
At the funeral for James Chaney, sorrow was mixed with anger.
I blame the people in Washington, D.C., and on down in the state of Mississippi for what happened just as much as I blame those who pulled the trigger.
Goodman, Chaney, and Schwerner were perceived as martyrs. The story of their death had a ripple effect in nearly every segment of American society.
They gave their life, they gave some blood to help redeem the very soul of America.
It lit a fire under college students around America to come on into the South, take the risk, help blacks register to vote, and move America forward in this whole struggle for justice.
But Mississippi was digging in its heels, despite the fact that FBI agents learned from Klan informants the identities of 18 men believed to be involved in the murders. Not one of the suspects was brought up on murder charges.
Seeing them smirk as they came out of the courthouse and smile and wave, and seeing people support them, when they were first tried to indict them, but they were let go, it was horrifying.
Finally, the U.S. Justice Department stepped in. On October 20th, 1967, 7 Klansmen, including Imperial Wizard Sam Bowers and Deputy Price, were found guilty of federal civil rights violations in the deaths of the 3 men. Their sentences ranged from 3 to 10 years. But was it justice?
I don't think there was justice because civil rights were violated, yes, but 3 men were murdered, and they were not tried for murder.
But the 3 civil rights workers did not die in vain. With the passage of the Civil Rights Act, the movement had gained incredible momentum.